All right, get ready because today we're going deep, really deep into one of those stories that just grabs you and won't let go.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about Evelyn Dick,
Okay.
a Canadian socialite whose life you could say was a roller coaster. Secrets, scandals,
Oh, you can say it.
murder.
What's wild about Evelyn Dick is that on the surface, she seemed like any other average woman from Hamilton, Ontario. But underneath, well, there was a darkness just waiting to come out.
It did, it really did.
It did.
Okay, so imagine this. It's the 1940s, and suddenly, this seemingly ordinary housewife is at the center of a murder. It gripped the entire nation. And it wasn't just any murder either. We're talking dismemberment, hidden body parts, a web of suspects. Agatha Christie would be jealous.
Sounds like a good one.
Are you ready to be the jury on this one?
I think so.
Because our deep dive today isn't just about the facts of the case. It's about what they tell us about how society back then, in the 1940s, viewed women, crime, and this whole idea of keeping up appearances.
A lot to unpack.
We've got a Wikipedia article to guide us, so let's get into it.
Okay, sounds good.
Where do we even begin with this one?
Well, it all starts in a small town called Beamsville, Ontario. Evelyn McLean was born there in 1920.
Okay.
Her family moved to Hamilton when she was young, and, well, that's where things start to get interesting. You see, her father, Donald McLean, he was a bit of a character, let's say.
Oh,
He had a pretty serious drinking problem
okay.
and a knack for, we found out later, embezzling, like a cool $200,000
Whoa.
stolen from his employer, the Hamilton Street Railway.
So not exactly a model citizen?
No, not exactly.
I mean, you have to wonder what kind of environment that created at home, with all that going on.
Yeah, and if Evelyn learned about financial, deception from an early age,
Yeah, talk about a dysfunctional family. That's a lot for a young girl to carry
a
around.
lot of baggage.
And speaking of baggage, fast forward to 1945 when 20-year-old Evelyn marries John Dick,
Okay.
a man 15 years older than her, from a very strict Mennonite family. I don't know about you, but
That's quite an age gap.
it raises some eyebrows, yeah.
It does, and makes you think if maybe those differences played a role in their, let's just say, tumultuous relationship.
Tumultuous is putting it lightly.
Yeah, they're married. It was like a firework. Bright, loud, and over before you know it.
So short-lived.
Very. It lasted 3 months, a measly 3 months. And during that time, Evelyn, well, she wasted no time starting an affair with a man named Bill Bohozuk.
So already things are messy. She separates from John, and then poof, he vanishes.
Gone.
And here's where the story takes a seriously dark, dark turn.
Oh.
A group of kids were just out playing on Hamilton Mountain, minding their own business, and they stumbled upon something horrific.
Oh.
Not even just a body, a torso. Can you imagine?
That's awful. Those poor kids.
It's the kind of discovery that stays with you. And to make matters worse, the victim was very quickly identified as John Dick. All thanks to, well, let's just say a very unique physical characteristic.
I see.
Gruesome doesn't even begin to describe it. And so, of course, immediately, the police zero in on Evelyn. I mean, she's the estranged wife, there's bad blood, it's the obvious place to start. But what they find at her house?
What'd they find?
Well, that's when things go from bad to absolutely bone-chilling.
Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So picture this. The investigators, they're searching the house, and they make this horrifying discovery.
Okay.
John's head and limbs, they had been burned in the furnace.
Oh my God.
This wasn't just a murder. This was a deliberate attempt to, destroy evidence,
Could cut their tracks.
to erase John Dick completely.
Wow.
So we've got a murder, we've got dismemberment, and now we've got a whole lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
And it wasn't long before suspicion fell, not just on Evelyn, but on her father, Donald, and her lover, Bill Bohozuk, too. It's like ripped from the pages of a detective novel.
Yeah.
So was this a crime of passion? Was this a conspiracy?
There's something even more sinister.
The trial that followed, it was a media frenzy.
Oh, I better.
Remember, this is the 1940s, so no internet, no 24-hour news cycle, but this case, it was the talk of the town.
The talk of the country, probably.
And then, in the middle of it all, boom, Evelyn's black book drops.
Black Book.
We have to explain this. This wasn't just a diary, it was like a meticulously kept record of all of Evelyn's affairs.
Affairs, plural.
Oh, yeah. And she claimed to have slept with over 150 men.
Wow, that's a lot.
Most of them were, get this, men of means, far wealthier than poor John ever was. And the prosecution, of course, they jumped all over this. They painted her as this promiscuous socialite, a woman with, let's say, loose morals capable of anything. But what's interesting to me is how this played into the norms of the time.
You mean like the double standard?
A woman who dared to be so open about her sexuality, that was scandalous. Even kids were singing rhymes about it back then.
Right.
Yeah, it fed into this whole idea of the fallen woman, the temptress, the woman who dared to defy expectations. And the prosecution used it to their advantage, suggesting that a woman capable of that kind of behavior could also be capable of murder. But legally speaking,
That's tricky.
it was a risky move. The defense could easily argue that her past affairs, no matter how shocking, were totally irrelevant to the murder.
Yeah, that's character assassination.
Trying to sway the jury with character, not with facts, right?
Yeah.
So did it work? Was the jury swayed by the Black Book and all these, scandalous revelations? Well, the jury did find Evelyn guilty of murder, and she was sentenced to death by hanging.
That's bang.
Pretty heavy sentence.
Wow.
But remember, this is before Canada abolished the death penalty.
Oh, right.
It was a different era, different standards of justice, I guess you could say.
So if she was sentenced to death, how is there more to this story?
Her new lawyer, J.J. Robinette, he was renowned, a master of his craft. He managed to successfully appeal the verdict, arguing that certain evidence had been mishandled.
So a legal victory.
A major turning point in the case.
Gotcha. So the death penalty's off the table. What about her father, Donald? Did he get away with it?
Not quite. Donald was found guilty not of murder, but of being an accessory after the fact.
Right.
Basically, the jury believed that he helped Evelyn cover up the crime, but wasn't directly involved in the killing itself. He ended up serving 4 years in prison.
I see.
So you see, even back then, the law recognized, different levels of involvement in a crime. It wasn't just black and white, guilty or not guilty. There were nuances, legal distinctions that could mean the difference between a few years behind bars and, well, a hangman's noose.
Right.
Okay, so Evelyn escapes the death penalty. Her dad goes to jail for helping her cover things up. So that's where it all ends, right?
Is that it?
Wrong. Remember that attic we talked about where they found John's remains? Well, turns out that attic had more secrets to reveal. And this one is even more disturbing. I grew up near Hamilton Mountain, and as a kid, every creaky attic just seemed like it held a secret after that story came
I
out.
bet. So what did they find?
Brace yourself, because what they found in that attic was a total game changer. It was a suitcase,
Okay.
and inside that suitcase, encased in cement, they discovered the partially mummified body of a baby boy.
No way. Oh my God.
Just let that sink in for a minute.
That's awful.
So not only was she accused of murdering her husband, but now there's a dead baby involved.
This is too much.
It is. And remember all those affairs Evelyn documented in her Black Book?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out she had 3 children from these affairs.
3 kids.
Kept secret from the world. And the baby in the suitcase, he was identified as Peter David White, one of her hidden sons. So she was living this double life, the socialite with the Black Book and a string of lovers, and then this secret mother hiding her own children.
How did she manage to pull that off?
Yeah.
People gossiped just as much back then, didn't they?
It seems Evelyn was incredibly skilled at, compartmentalizing her life. She told different stories to different people, creating this smoke screen of lies and half-truths.
I see.
To some, she was the heartbroken widow. To others, she was the carefree socialite. And remember, this was a time before paternity tests, DNA evidence,
White.
much easier to get away with deception. But then, the discovery of Peter's body just blew everything wide open.
I bet.
The torso murder, as it was known, it became a double murder mystery, sent shockwaves through the nation. And for the prosecution, finding Peter's body was like a whole new case opening up.
Oh.
Suddenly, they had a new angle, a new victim, and a much stronger case against Evelyn. So we've gone from a scandalous love triangle to a double murder investigation involving a secret baby hidden in an attic. I think we need a moment to process all of this.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Evelyn Dick. Last time we left off with the discovery of baby Peter's body. And that revelation, well, it turned this already bizarre case into something truly, nightmarish.
Yeah, it did make you question, what you think you know about people.
Right.
On the surface, you have this glamorous socialite going from one affair to the next, but then you pull back the curtain and you've got this whole other life.
The secret life.
This secret motherhood.
Desperate attempts to maintain an image.
And then, of course, the big question is, how did Peter die? Was this another cold-blooded murder, or was it something else entirely?
Right, because now we're not just talking about John's death. We have a potential second murder on our hands.
A baby.
A helpless infant. And you mentioned that the prosecution had a much stronger case this time around. What was their strategy?
Well, with Peter's body as evidence, they can now build this whole narrative, this woman capable of not just one, but two horrific acts. They pointed to the fact that Evelyn had a motive to keep these children secret, right?
Yeah.
They threatened her image, her social standing,
Right.
and the method of disposal. I mean, encasing a body in cement and hiding it in the attic.
Yeah.
That suggests premeditation and a certain, cold-heartedness that shocked even the investigators.
Yeah. You're probably wondering, though, how did she get away with hiding those children for so long, especially in a time when everyone knew their neighbor's business?
Well, it seems Evelyn was just very skilled at, compartmentalizing her life.
Yeah.
She told different stories to different people, creating this smokescreen, this web of lies and half-truths.
So she was a good liar.
And this is before paternity tests, DNA evidence.
All right.
It was much easier to get away with that kind of deception back then.
Okay, so what was the verdict in this second trial? Did they convict her of murdering her own child?
Well, they tried her for murder, but the jury actually found her guilty of a lesser charge, manslaughter.
Okay.
Which means they believed that she was responsible for Peter's death, but they didn't have enough evidence to prove it was premeditated.
That seems like a loophole, a way to let her off easy.
It might, but, juries have to weigh the evidence.
Right.
And in this case, there may have been questions about, the cause of death,
Okay.
the timeline, whether or not she intended to kill her son.
We can't know for sure what went on in that jury room.
But the verdict suggests that they weren't entirely convinced of her guilt
Okay.
when it came to murder.
That's still a serious conviction.
It is.
How much time did she end up serving for manslaughter?
Evelyn was sentenced to 11 years in prison for the manslaughter of her son.
Wow.
However, after serving her time, she was paroled in 1958.
11 years doesn't seem like a very long sentence for, taking a life.
It's true, but we have to think about, the time period.
Okay.
Sentencing guidelines were different. Societal attitudes towards crime and punishment were different.
Okay.
Plus, she had already spent a considerable amount of time incarcerated,
Right.
awaiting trials.
Okay, that makes sense. So Evelyn serves her time, gets out of prison. What happens next? Does she try to rebuild her life? Does she fade into obscurity?
That's where things take a very unexpected turn.
Okay.
Upon her release, she was given a new identity and basically vanished.
Wait, she just disappeared? How is that even possible? You can't just erase someone's past.
Well, it seems the authorities wanted to give her a fresh start,
A clean slate.
a clean slate, away from the shadow of her crimes.
Wow.
And they were successful. No one knows for sure what became of her.
So she completely reinvented herself.
Lived out the rest of her days in anonymity.
It's incredible and also kind of unsettling.
It is.
To make sure she had privacy, her file was permanently sealed.
After she received a pardon in 1985,
So even though she was convicted of manslaughter, she was officially forgiven.
it might seem counterintuitive, but a pardon, it wipes the slate clean.
Huh.
Think of it as an acknowledgement, that someone served their time, paid their debt,
Okay.
and they're now considered rehabilitated.
A second chance.
The second chance.
Mm.
In Evelyn's case, it was a chance to disappear completely.
Wow. So she goes from convicted killer to free woman, new identity, clean record, like something out of a spy novel.
It's certainly a unique case.
But despite the, horrific nature of her crimes, her story continues to fascinate people.
Yeah.
That fascination goes beyond just the court case, the legal proceedings.
It seeped into popular culture, became the stuff of legend,
Really?
whispered rumors, late-night campfire stories.
In what ways?
Well, for starters, there was a popular schoolyard rhyme that went around at the time of the murders.
A rhyme.
It went something like this. You cut off his legs, you cut off his arms, you cut off his head. How could you miss his dick? How could you miss his dick?
That's surprisingly catchy for something so morbid.
It was a different time.
Well, I can't imagine kids singing that today.
But the fascination with Evelyn Dick, it continued beyond those rhymes. It inspired creative works, books, plays,
Really?
even a TV movie
A movie?
called Torso, the Evelyn Dick story.
Wow.
It seems we just have this fascination with true crime.
Especially when there are unanswered questions.
Yeah, those unresolved mysteries. We're drawn to the darkness, the unknown, the possibility that there might be more to the story.
They made a whole movie about her. Some stories are better left untold, aren't they? It's like we're glorifying what she did.
It depends. The movie actually tries to humanize Evelyn a bit,
Oh.
suggesting that maybe she was trying to protect her parents,
Okay.
who were also considered potential suspects
Right.
in both murders.
Wow.
It also hints at a history of abuse,
Abuse.
both sexual and emotional,
Oh my God.
at the hands of her father.
So the movie portrays her as a victim of circumstance. Like she was forced into this life of crime by this manipulative family.
It's like we're trying to find a remedy
Inexplicable.
for why someone would do something so unthinkable.
Was she a cold-blooded killer?
A victim?
Or something in between? We may never know.
And the fact that she completely disappeared after her release from prison, it just adds to the enigma.
Yeah.
Did she find peace and anonymity? Or was she haunted by her past?
That's a good question.
It's a question that's haunted historians, criminologists, armchair detectives for decades.
It's almost as if Evelyn Dick, the person, vanished just as completely as the body parts of her victims.
It's fascinating and a little unsettling, isn't it?
It is. And speaking of unsettling, I read that in 2014, a designer, Chris Farias, I think, he released a whole line of merchandise inspired by Evelyn Dick.
What?
Clothing, kitchen items, all kinds of stuff.
No way.
Yeah, the merchandise, it featured slogans, imagery, all referencing Evelyn Dick and her crimes.
Not a bit much, isn't it?
It sparked a lot of controversy.
I bet.
A men's rights group, the Canadian Association for Equality, they protested the merchandise. They called it disgusting, insensitive to the victims.
Yeah, I can see why they'd be upset.
It's one thing to be fascinated by a historical crime, but it's another to profit from it.
Especially when it involves such brutal acts.
It seems like there's a fine line between exploring a dark chapter of history and just exploiting it.
For commercial gain.
Where do we draw the line?
Between morbid curiosity and respect for the victims.
That's a tough one.
It's a debate that continues.
It does. But for now, let's take a step back from, I don't know, the spectacle,
Yeah.
the headlines, the merchandise. Let's focus on what we can learn from the case of Evelyn Dick.
What does her story tell us about ourselves? About society? About our fascination with the darker side of human nature?
That's a great question, and one that might lead us down another rabbit hole.
Yeah,
But that's a conversation for another deep dive. For now, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up our exploration of the enigmatic and ultimately tragic life of Evelyn Dick.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the life and times of Evelyn Dick. I don't know about you, but I'm still thinking about all those twists and turns.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing.
And the ones you do have,
Keep changing shape, yeah.
a case that defies easy answers.
It really does. So we've covered the scandalous affairs, the gruesome murders, the dramatic trials,
And course.
her ultimate disappearance. But after all of that, Evelyn Dick is still an enigma
A puzzle box.
with a missing key.
Yeah, we talked about the Black Book, the Schoolyard Rhymes, even a movie. It's like her story became this blank canvas for everyone to, I don't know, put their own spin on it.
Project their own
Interpretations.
fears, fascinations. It's a case that, I don't know, it tapped into something primal, something that resonates even today.
It's unsettling, isn't it? The idea of a seemingly ordinary person with this darkness inside.
Yeah. It challenges how we see things, our sense of order.
The fact that she was never brought to justice, for John's murder at least.
Right, and she was able to just escape, reinvent herself.
It adds another layer to it all.
Like she outsmarted the system,
Yeah.
disappeared into the shadows.
The thing that gets me is even with all the evidence, the Black Book, the hidden baby, we still don't know for sure what her motivation was.
Yeah, why'd she do it?
Was she a cold-blooded killer, a desperate woman pushed to the edge, or, I don't know, both?
It's the question everyone wants answered.
And the fact that we may never know, that's what makes it stick with you.
It makes you think about, the limits of what we can understand. Some mysteries, they may never be solved.
And maybe that's a lesson here. The case of Evelyn Dick, it's not just some true crime story. It reminds us that human nature, it's complex.
Things aren't always what they seem.
And sometimes the most interesting stories are the ones left unfinished.
It invites us to question, to analyze, grapple with the unknown. And I think in a world where we're just bombarded with information.
Easy answers.
Yeah, easy answers, quick solutions, that's a valuable thing.
Absolutely. Sometimes the best questions are the ones that don't have answers. Connecting this to the bigger picture, it challenges us to think about the role of women in society back then and now.
Right. Evelyn Dick defied expectations, she broke the rules, and she paid the price.
It's a tragic story, but there's also a sense of rebellion.
Yeah, a refusal to conform.
On the one hand, you have this horrible crime, this loss of life.
Senseless.
But on the other, you have this woman trapped in a web of her own making, secrets and lies.
That led to her downfall.
It's a cautionary tale.
But also a story of survival.
Yeah, she went through so much, the trials, the prison time.
Public scrutiny.
And still, she escaped.
Created a new life for herself.
We may never know the details.
But she did it.
It's remarkable. She rose from the ashes, a phoenix reborn. Maybe that's how we should remember her. Not as a monster, not as a victim, but as a survivor. A woman who, despite her flaws, her crimes, was able to create a new path for herself, even with all that adversity.
Powerful image.
So I think we've done our best to unpack the, complexities of Evelyn Dick's life.
The crimes.
We've looked at the historical context, the legal battles,
Societal impact.
the mystery surrounding her. We've left no stone unturned.
And yet, still so many questions.
Maybe that's the point.
The case of Evelyn Dick, it reminds us that some stories, they're just meant to be unfinished.
Some puzzles never solved.
And in the end, it's that journey, the exploration, trying to figure it all out, that really makes us understand what it means to be human.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of Evelyn Dick. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and